This right here is the cheapest Leica camera that you can buy. It costed me about $75 on eBay, and you can pretty easily find it for under $100. But at that low of a price, even being a Leica camera, is it even worth buying still? So the one I got came in this original box. Let's go ahead and unbox it and see what you get for a $100 Leica camera. So of course, first of all, you have the box. It says Leica right there, the Leica C-Lux 1. Now there's a new Leica C-Lux that came out a few years ago, like 2018 I think. This is not that camera. This actually was released in 2006. So this is a 15-year-old camera. Now yes, this is a digital camera, it's not a film camera, but it is a point and shoot camera, so it has an attached lens. You can't change the lens, it's just built into it, which could be a good or a bad thing. First of all, we got the instructions here, little pamphlets, and the manual in here. It's all in the original packaging, which is super awesome. This is the Leica C-Lux 1 from 2006. Now first of all, this camera is absolutely tiny. I mean, it fits right in the palm of my hand, it can fit right in my pocket. When you turn it off, the lens goes right back into the body, so it's just super small, just a little rectangle basically. And it's even quite a bit smaller than my iPhone 12. This isn't the 12 Pro Max or anything, this is the regular size iPhone 12. In terms of digital cameras, this thing is absolutely tiny. Now everything else about it is pretty straightforward. This is a very simple camera. There's not a whole lot of different settings. There's not a whole lot of different features. And that, I think, for this type of camera is a good thing. Because like I said, this is a point and shoot camera. This is meant to just pull out of your pocket, take a picture, and that's it. It's not meant to do anything else besides just take a picture as simply and as easily as possible and be as portable as possible. And after taking some pictures and just carrying this thing around for a while, I think it does exactly that. So first off, like I said, this camera is absolutely tiny and barely weighs anything. I'll put up this dimensions and weight somewhere around here. I don't know the exact dimensions and weight, but this thing is tiny. However, the shell or the body of it is mostly made out of metal, which makes it feel really good in the hand. It doesn't feel plasticky and like it's just gonna bend and warp. And that, paired along with how small and light it is, just makes this feel like a premium camera. Of course, it's from 2006, it's a 15-year-old camera, and it's a point and shoot camera, so it's not gonna feel like, you know, a Canon 1DX Mark III, like just an insanely well-built tank. But for what it is, for being a small point and shoot, super light camera, this thing feels really, really nice. This ranges from 28mm to 102mm full frame equivalent. And that is a pretty good focal range. 28mm is, for the most part, about as wide as you're gonna need to get unless you want ultra wide shots. And 102mm is pretty telephoto, especially with a tiny camera like this. That is pretty far zoomed in. Now there's no manual focus, there's no like zoom rings or focus rings or anything like that. You have a little zoom rocker on the top here to zoom in from, of course, 28 to 102mm and anything in between. But that's about it. You can only use autofocus with this. Like I said, this is literally meant to pull out of your pocket, turn it on, take a picture. And so I kind of think of this different than, you know, like a really cheap Sony point and shoot or a really cheap Panasonic point and shoot camera. Just because Leica is such a well-known, super high quality camera brand, you just have to think of it a little different than any other camera brand. You know, I think any other brand cameras from this generation, from 2006, you know, point and shoot cameras like this, are gonna be more plasticky, they're not gonna be built as well. And I think that's mostly what Leica did with this camera, is just make it built like a tank. It's, you know, made out of metal, like I said. It's built so well. Now, of course, they did spend time, you know, with the colors and with the images, making those look really good. So this camera cannot shoot raw photos. That's something that at first glance I was kind of disappointed with. I love being able to edit my photos as much as possible in post, and this camera cannot do that. I think the fact that this is a point and shoot camera kind of makes up for the fact that this doesn't shoot in RAW. It doesn't have very many manual settings. You can't manually set your shutter speed or your aperture. You can only manually set your ISO. And, you know, it's just such a basic camera that I think the fact that you can't shoot in RAW, you can't do all that stuff, really just helps play into the fact that you just need to grab this camera, turn it on, and just take pictures with it. So this camera has Mega OIS, as they call it, which is their built-in stabilization. This works surprisingly well, and I can zoom all the way into 102mm and still get pretty decent shots as long as I hold it as still as I can. And for anything else in between, that stabilization's really, really good. You know, it helps out if you're in a lower light condition where it has a slower shutter speed. You can still get fairly sharp images without being all blurry from shaking. It also has a built-in flash, which is awesome for this small and compact of a camera. Having a built-in flash is of course just one of those little added features that just kind of helps out. Now some of the cons of this is of course it doesn't shoot in RAW, it doesn't have very many manual settings or just any settings in general. You know, if it did have more customization but with the option to keep it all in auto for just being a simple point and shoot, I think that would have been better. But again, I'm not going to complain too much about that because this camera's meant for simplicity and that's what they do really good. Also it has a very bad screen. When I first took this camera out and took some pictures with it, looking at them on the screen, I really contemplated if I should even continue making this video. I looked at them and I was just super disappointed. I thought this is just, you know, they were gonna look pixelated, they were gonna look terrible, until I imported them onto my computer and saw them on an actual decent screen. So keep that in mind, the screen looks terrible, it's very low resolution. Everything about it is just not a very good screen at all. And there's no viewfinder either, so you have to look at the screen in order to take pictures. Also, it records very bad quality video. I'll show an example of the video quality, but I wouldn't recommend using it at all for literally anything. Alright, this is the video and audio quality, the Leica C-Lux 1. Out in pretty bright sunlight, so it's good lighting, it's not low light or anything like that. Just out at the park right now. So yeah, that's what it looks like. Also, with SD cards, none of my newer SD cards worked. I'm not sure if that was because of the capacity of them, it just doesn't accept higher capacity SD cards, but only my 1 and 2 gigabyte really old SD cards worked. So you have to use really old low capacity SD cards. I'm not sure what the highest capacity is, but to be on the safe side, I would use anything under 2 gigabytes. Now that sounds terrible, but actually each picture is only like 2 or 3 megabytes in size. So on a 1 gigabyte SD card, I think you can fit like 300 photos. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's definitely an inconvenience. If you don't have a really small SD card, you're gonna have to buy one as well. And that's pretty much it for the main specs, the main pros and cons of this camera. Now the last thing I want to bring up before we get into some of the photos I've taken with this camera is the ISO performance. So like I said, this can shoot in 80 ISO, 100 ISO, 200 and 400 ISO. And I took some test photos with each of these ISOs, and pretty much at the end of the day it looks like 80 ISO is probably where you want to stick at and maybe go up to 100, but once you get up to 200 and 400 it starts to bring in a lot of noise and starts to really degrade the image quality. So I would recommend setting this to either 80 or 100 and just keeping it at that. If you use auto ISO, chances are in any darker conditions it's going to go up to 400. It's going to look really grainy and not very good, and you're probably going to be disappointed with the photos it takes. I wouldn't use this in any sort of low light scenarios, it's going to look really bad. But for any daylight conditions, I would put it at 80 ISO and just let everything else adjust automatically, and you're going to get pretty good images with pretty low noise. So there we go. Like I said, this is a super simple camera. There's really nothing else to say about this camera. It's super simple. It's a 28 to 102 millimeter zoom lens point and shoot camera that shoots 6 megapixel photos. That's about it. Now in terms of recommending this, if you can find this for, you know, around like $75 like I did, and you're looking for just a camera to maybe replace your smartphone, you want to move up from your phone and just don't really know where to start, and you're not sure if you really want to get into photography yet, this is a great beginner camera to start with. It takes good photos, the colors are really good on it, it has a really good zoom lens in it from 28 to 102 millimeters for like hiking or travel photos where you can't have a super big camera with you. I would definitely recommend checking this out. Of course, you can't buy it new anywhere. You're gonna have to search on eBay, and there's not always very many for sale, so you might have to search for it to find a good deal. But if you do find a good deal and you fit all those criteria, which might not be a lot of you, but if you do fit those criteria, I think you should definitely check this out. Consider purchasing it and just having it as a fun camera to take around with you wherever you go and take some photos. Now, like I said, if you need video, don't even consider this. There's no microphone input jack. It doesn't even record 720p video. It's super noisy. Don't even consider using this for video. But for photos, this definitely surprised me for how old and how cheap it is. This camera has a surprisingly good value for its price. But that wraps up this video. Definitely stay tuned and subscribe if you're interested in more videos like this in the future. I'll be covering lots more budget cameras like this. So if you're interested in that, hit the like button and subscribe. And besides that, that wraps this video up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.